Welcome back. You're listening to Get Real with Bob and Stacy here joining us for our Leaders and Legends segment. Our guest is co-founder of Made Design, Jared Skinner. He's also an architectural designer. Welcome to the show, Jared.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
So I want to give everybody some background on Jared. As Bob said, he's co-founder and design principal at Made Design. By the way, you can find their website at made.design. They design physical spaces and experiences which help people fall in love with brands, from retail storefronts to corporate headquarters to experiential pop-ups. Jared is an award-winning young designer who was recently named one of the 10 hottest designers to watch by Inc. magazine. So first, Jared, tell us all about Made Design.
Yeah, so Made Design, it's an architectural design studio created for further connecting people with their brands. We kind of identify the product, how consumers engage with the product, what the product or company is about, really everything involved with that product. And then we just kind of see about distilling things down to identify how design can really help reinforce the user experience and consumption, the interaction with that product.
Okay. So how do you think retailers can do a better job with their brick and mortar stores so that they have a better chance at competing?
Yeah, so basically people no longer want the rows of product in a fluorescent light-filled space. Basically everything we've seen in the past where everything's stocked up, you walk in, you walk up and down the rows, pick out what you want, and then you're out. Okay, users are really paying attention to these things, and they want an experience now when they're shopping. And it's all about the kind of the point of sale and how they interact with that product. So it's up to the company and the sellers to provide them that experience, not just that product. I mean, you see that with the Toys R Us bankruptcy, right? I mean, they had the toys on the shelves, and kids love shelves, but it was more to that, right? People wanted an experience. They wanted to be able to touch things, to sense these things, to get an experience of what they were buying, not just walk in, pick it off the shelf, and leave.
That's interesting.
What's a new trend in office designs, Jared?
Yeah, so a recent study just came out, and they were talking about how 54% of work is done in isolation, where people can actually put their heads down and work. And I think that means no longer the open space or open plan idea is as viable as it once was. For the longest time, everybody, that's what they wanted, an open plan, big, large tables, everybody can kind of co-work together. And I think that's true in a sense, but I think what we're going to start seeing is more of an emergence of this kind of city plan, which I say that the city plan similar to something like New York, right? You've got Times Square where there's tons of people, everybody is kind of huddling together in the sense of community, but then you have all these kind of arterial routes that seem to break out from that, and they kind of span into these smaller, thinner spaces where there's not as much people. And I think you're going to see that in kind of more corporate headquarters, right, where people can come and work together, lounge around, the sense of community. But when people need to get work done, they kind of meander around to these smaller alcoves or spaces where people can actually put their head down, focus on what they want to, and get the work done that they need to.
That's really interesting. I was reading an article recently about it, how it seemed like everybody was going to that wide open collaborative workspace, but then a lot of people actually started calling in sick so they could get work done from home because they couldn't do it in the office anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a great concept, and I think everybody, that's why coffee shops seem to be so popular. People want that sense of community. They don't like being so isolated, but at the same time, there needs to be that distance and that focus and the ability to actually get things done.
That's cool.
You talk a lot about the connected consumer and designing around that person. Who exactly is the connected consumer?
So the connected consumer is essentially anybody with a smartphone, right? Anybody that has the internet at their fingertips, that are always connected. Anybody who shops on Amazon, anybody who surfs the internet, anybody who's on Instagram, anybody who can push a button and order something and get that the next day is somebody that's connected, that has the ability to be on the internet at any given point whenever they need to.
Okay, so how do you design around somebody like that? That's not. It seems like, because I agree, I think there are connected consumers, but even I'll say, like, when I'm out shopping, I'm also connected to my phone, so I'm checking text messages and paying less attention to what's on the shelves. So how do you design around that?
Yes, that's interesting that you said that, because recently there was a Nordstrom store that opened up in LA, and it was an experiential store. And the cool thing about this Nordstrom store is they don't have any inventory. So it's not a typical Nordstrom store where you walk in, you pick something off the shelf. This is an experiential store. So you get the Nordstrom brand, but you get the Nordstrom experience. So you walk in, they've got restaurants and bars, pedicures, manicures, facials, and you can get a little private shopping experience with a private stylist who will kind of put together a style for you, and they'll send it to you. But you don't walk out of the store that day with anything. So it's them learning that, yes, they do have a big audience on the internet and the web, but that's not their main audience. And they still have these people that want this physical experience, that want something bigger than just walking in and picking it off the shelf.
That's so interesting. I want to go check that out. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Jared, how do design and marketing work together?
And so I think this goes back to just reinforcing the brand, right? Marketing and design being hand in hand from the beginning, the get-go of a project, is vital to the brand being successful in this design. So if Anthropologie, in the study I saw last year, they had upped their point of sale by, I think it was like 15%, and not because they rebranded or did anything crazy, but they just paid attention that their store had a unique smell, their store had a unique touch. Anything you rubbed your hand on in the store, the way you walked through the store, everything you experienced about that store was changed, but it also was changed to where any Anthropologie you walked in was similar to that. So whenever you're walking around the corner, you got this smell, you realize, oh, there's an Anthropologie close by. Or, oh, you saw the colors, oh, there's an Anthropologie here. All this reinforces the brand, and I think it's great for consumers that really start to pay attention to these things to be able to recognize the products that they're starting to consume that way.
Wow. How do you think going to school for architecture shaped how you view the world and do your work?
I think it was pretty vital to kind of how I see things nowadays. You really start to, in school, you realize the impact that architecture has on the world. And I think I didn't really notice that as much before school, just kind of how impactful the built environment is, and really how a lot of people haven't done it as well as they should have, I think, and how it's up to us to really shape our environment in the way that we want to, and to be cognizant of everything that's around us and make great buildings, great environments, great spaces for the people that inhabit them.
That's awesome. I interviewed recently the CEO of the paper stores, and if you ever come to New England, you'll see the paper stores everywhere. It's kind of like a massive, I think they're 5,000 or 6,000 square feet gift shop, and there's like 50 or 60 of them throughout New England. It's massive. But I had interviewed him, and it's interesting because when you go into those, the way they look at it is that they have within their gift shop, they have like 6 specific sections, and they look at each one as its own store, basically. So they look at it that they have 6 stores within each store, and each one is designed very differently. So even though you're in this 5,000 square foot area, it's like you're going into 6 different sections as you're walking around. Do you think that's common, doing stuff like that in designing spaces?
Yeah, I think it is, especially with larger retailers, because they realize that they need to break down the space, right? It can be overwhelming when you walk into a space, I don't know, 12,000 square feet, and you realize how massive the space is. You don't know where to start. You just start kind of walking around and meandering. But as soon as people start realizing that they can break down the space and the scale and make it more tangible for the user, I think it helps them to kind of interact with the store and the brand and the product in general.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. And then as far as, like, I know a lot of businesses, even, so I own a whole bunch of real estate offices. So I have 24 locations, which means 24 offices with bricks and mortar. And I see some of my competitors moving into the WeWork spaces. So, like, they're sharing office space, etc. So my question for you, as a designer and understanding trends in businesses, like, as I design my offices, definitely they're getting smaller. It seems like when I look at a WeWork space, I should be spending more time on making sure, like, my kitchen and snack area is unbelievable and spending less time on making sure the actual workspace and desk is incredible. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes hand in hand, but definitely the more communal spaces are going to be used most, right? And they're going to get the heavy wear and tear. The spaces where people need to work, I don't think it needs to be that. It doesn't need to be that elaborate or over the top, right? Because people are there to work. They're not there for all the other uses that, say, people want to hang out in the kitchen, right? I mean, you need all those sections. You need all those areas. And I know everybody pays attention to all these little details, but people, when they want to work, I think they just want to work. So as long as there's small spaces where people can post up a laptop and their sketchbook and get work done, a small table will suffice. But, you know, places like kitchens and lounge areas and places where people want to take a break from the work and they can hang out and gather. Yeah, I mean, I think it needs to, I think they both need to be designed with the user in mind. But I do think that obviously those communal spaces get used more so.
Yes. And the other thing that I think is becoming a dinosaur, especially in my industry of real estate, is the desks with a whole bunch of drawers. So slowly but surely, I've been trying to wean people off of having assigned desk spaces, because the way the real estate business works, fewer and fewer people come to the office daily because everything's on their iPad or laptop. They can literally work anywhere. So you see less people working from a desk. But people still feel like they need to have a desk space that is assigned to them, that is just theirs. And I really watch closely because it's expensive to pay for the space. And all it is a place that accumulates junk that nobody ever looks at. Nobody ever constantly uses the drawers. So junk gets placed in them. The person actually comes in maybe once a week. So I like the idea of, like, the communal spaces with a table where you don't leave your stuff behind. Just come in, park for a little while, and leave.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing with the big desks and all the drawers, it was great, you know, a while back because people could actually store their papers and everything in there. But now the drawers, like you said, they just get inundated with junk. And granted, they can you need a place for, like, your pencils and like a few pieces of paper, but everything's digital. So one thing that I think is great is something like a kind of group space where you can sit 6 to 8 people at a table. You can have one of those smart boards on it. Since everything's digital, somebody can hook up wirelessly, throw the document on the board. You guys can sketch over it, draw over it, edit the document. I mean, it's basically a full computer with everybody having access to it. And I think it's a smarter and more concise spatially way for people to kind of inhabit the space and cluttering everything up with tons of documents and papers and junk that you don't really need. Absolutely.
All right. Unfortunately, we are just about out of time. For anybody listening, business owners, etc., that might be interested in reaching out to you, how do they find out more about you and your company?
Yeah, so made.design is the website. You can also follow us on Instagram at madearch, ARCH, and Snapchat, at ARKTKT.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jared.
Thanks, Jared.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's all for this edition of Get Real. Make sure you tune in again next weekend for more.